You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the 12th Doctor story, The Witch's Familiar. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, be sure to, we would really appreciate it. It really helps a lot. If you write an Apple Podcast review or share the podcast with your friends, that helps us grow this community and reach more listeners. It's the number one way we actually get new listeners, so we really do appreciate that. I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Stargate. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate. So we're discussing The Witch's Familiar, which is the second part of a two-part 12th Doctor story. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens?
This week we learned that Missy and Clara survived being exterminated by the Daleks by teleporting away. They then start working their way back into the Dalek city to save the Doctor, going through the sewers, which are made of immortal decaying Daleks. Meanwhile, the Doctor is meeting with Davros, who succeeds in convincing him that he's dying. Davros is being fed energy from the Daleks through a device, but it isn't enough to keep him alive anymore. The Doctor has mercy on Davros, and to help him stay alive long enough to see the sunrise, the Doctor donates some regeneration energy into the machine. But the machine starts sucking lots of regeneration energy out of the Doctor, extending Davros's life and causing the Daleks to regenerate and become more powerful. It's all been a trick on the part of the Doctor, because he knew what Davros was doing and let him do it anyway. The regeneration energy has also gone into the decaying Daleks in the sewers, and they begin to erupt and destroy the city. As he's leaving, the Doctor meets Missy and Clara. Clara is disguised as a Dalek, and Missy tries to get the Doctor to kill Clara under the belief that she is a Dalek. But the Doctor figures it out when the Clara Dalek uses the word mercy, and he tells Missy to leave. He and Clara then use the Doctor's new sonic sunglasses to cause the TARDIS to reassemble itself so they can escape. Afterwards, the Doctor wonders how the Dalek shell Clara was in understood the concept of mercy. How did the concept of mercy get into the Dalek DNA? He then flies back to the ancient Skaro site with the hand mines and shows mercy on the boy Davros by saving him from the field of hand mines, completing our patented Stephen Moffat extra timey-wimey adventure for this week. The end.
So, couple things that occurred to me right off the top. First is the Doctor, as usual, especially in the Moffat era, is always one step ahead of everyone. You know, he's that extra clever boy who always knows. And so, even though Davros has tricked the Doctor into coming to Skaro, the Doctor knew all along what Davros' plan was. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he knew about the sewers being full of these impossibly invincible or undying Daleks, and was able to use the regeneration energy to recreate or resurrect these Daleks or whatever, and knew all this in advance.
Even though he had no interaction with the Dalek sewers in this episode.
No.
Right.
This is very different, for example, than how it would have played in the Fifth Doctor's time. In Peter Davison's time, Peter Davison would have just been tricked.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is it's kind of going back to what we've talked about before. Is this the all-powerful Doctor who's never on his back foot, who's always seems to know, to be one step ahead of everyone.
Well, it's that whole conversation at the beginning with Missy and Clara, where it's, the Doctor knows he's going to get out of this. He just has to take 2.3 milliseconds to figure out how he's going to do it.
Right. The Doctor always wins because he always assumes he'll win.
Except they try to make it more dramatic this time so we have this opening scene with Clara and Missy where they've teleported away. And I actually like this scene a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the best parts of the episode, where Clara and Missy are talking to each other. Missy's got Clara tied upside down, and she's just hanging there. And Missy is sharpening a pointed stick, and Clara says, why are you sharpening the pointed stick? And she says, well, I don't know how long we're going to be here. We might have to go hunting. And why am I tied upside down? In case there's nothing to hunt. and that's nice. And so Missy then starts walking Clara through. She tells this story that occurred in a previous incarnation, and we see glimpses of the Doctor's previous incarnation. She says she doesn't really know or care which one it was, so we're just going to stick with the eyebrows, at which point Peter Capaldi becomes the central figure in the story, and it's of him being attacked by invisible robot assassins and figuring out how to use the energy from their laser blasts to teleport away. And Clara realizes that's how you did it. You know, that's how you escaped at the end of Dark Water when you were apparently disintegrated. And she says, yeah, I modified the principles. And that's also how the two of them escaped from the Daleks just now, because they're wearing vortex manipulators that Missy had altered to be able to do that. And then Missy walks Clara through, why does the Doctor always win? And Clara says, well, he's clever. And she says, yes, but the cemeteries are full of clever people. Why does the Doctor always win? And Clara says, because he assumes he's going to. And Missy says, yes, but now he's written a last will and testament, referring to the confession dial, and thrown himself a goodbye party. So what happens now? Because he's not planning on winning this time. And Clara says, we happen. And Missy says, great, and we've got a pointed stick.
So the Doctor, if we're to believe, and it's Missy, so unreliable narrator, but the Doctor this time thinks he's going to die. That's why he made the confession dial, except he doesn't. He does assume he's going to win. So why does he make the confession dial?
It's this, dude, you're thinking. You're not supposed to think about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
The confession dial is part of the season-long arc.
Yeah.
Right. That's going to come up with the prophecy of the hybrid and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I was actually, as I was watching, like, okay, so Missy used the Doctor's trick of using the enemy's own blaster fire to escape. I didn't realize that Clara also had a vortex manipulator on her, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What? This seems like a really great trick. You should always be wearing one of these.
And the thing is, I don't think she did, because I thought when they jumped back, it was Clara was holding onto Missy's arm.
Yeah, I think so. So
I don't think
there's a little
Clara
hole in there.
had one. Yeah. I don't think Clara actually had one.
So
I thought that she said she did in this episode, but I could be mistaken.
Well, it's just, I'm thinking from last episode, she didn't actually have, but
I mean, it's
possible, but
again, we're thinking about it too much, I guess.
we're
not supposed to think about it.
Only thing we can talk about somewhat reliably is the HAD system on the TARDIS, because that is something we've seen multiple times, where it's the defensive system where the TARDIS will dematerialize and escape if it's under threat.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because we saw that all the way back to the second Doctor.
Trying to remember. Yeah, not quite in the same way where it looks like it disintegrates, which is kind of a cool defense system, but where it just beams away when it's under attack. That's right.
Yep.
And there's also a confrontation between the Doctor and the Daleks where the Doctor has been wanting Davros to get out of his chamber, and Davros says, I can't. And then we cut to the Dalek room where the Daleks are all meeting, and they announce that Davros is coming, and that's impossible. He can't leave his chamber. And we see that the top half of Davros has been ripped off his chair.
Right.
Yeah.
He apparently has no legs. And then the Doctor rolls into the Dalek room in Davros's chair. So it now appears as if Davros is the Doctor. And the Doctor says to the Daleks, admit it, you've all had this exact nightmare.
The Doctor is Davros. Davros is the Doctor. No kidding.
I love the Doctor says, anyone for Dodgems, which here in the United States, we would call that bumper cars.
Yeah.
Right.
Which to see a bunch of Daleks playing bumper cars would be pretty cool, actually.
Before that, we had when Missy and speaking of fun lines, Missy and Clara going into the sewer, they come upon this hole in the ground, and it's like, how deep is it? And we could throw in a rock, says Clara. So Missy says, okay, and pushes Clara into the hole. Oh, about 20 feet.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, Missy is just awesome.
Yeah, and as usual, the best part of this episode, or one of the best parts, is the dialogue that Stephen Moffat provides. Like there's a bit where Missy she doesn't reveal what her plan is to Clara, but she says in detail, what she's doing is getting the Dalek shell for Clara to occupy. And she handcuffs Clara to a Dalek wall sensor in the sewers. And I'm not a fan of the living sewers thing.
Yeah.
But she says, we need to kill a Dalek. You're the bait. I'm the hook. And Clara's like, how are you going to kill a Dalek? And she produces a brooch and says, Dark Star alloy goes through armor plating like a knife goes through people.
Which is a play on the knife goes through butter.
Yeah.
That is suitably creepy. The doctor.
Another really great bit and on the dialogue level. At one point, the doctor has been recaptured and he's been put back in Davros's chamber, and we see him sitting there and he's disoriented, and we hear Davros in voiceover saying to him, "You should feel honored. It wasn't easy to procure the only other chair on Skaro." And we realize the doctor is sitting in a chair.
Daleks don't need chairs, do they? Yeah, when Missy was killing the Dalek with the brooch, she says, "Oh, killing Daleks is Time Lord golf." I like that.
Yeah,
it's our favorite pastime. When the doctor evicted Davros from his chair and had the personal force field for it, he says, "Of course, it's got a personal force field. Davros is a paranoid genius living among trigger-happy mini tanks for centuries," which is a good line.
Yeah. I'm definitely having his chair.
And then, so when he confronts the Dalek Supreme in that chamber while he's sitting in the chair, the Dalek Supreme says, he's got this the gun, the Dalek gun, and the Dalek Supreme says, "The Doctor does not use weapons." And the Doctor says, "Doesn't he?"
He doesn't in New Who, but he definitely did in Classic Who.
Yeah,
there are times that he's blasted Daleks, so.
And sometimes even in New Who, but he's inconsistent about it, which is probably why the Dalek Supreme is a little confused about it.
Something about Nitro 9 that Ace wasn't supposed to have.
Well, or Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor, blaster directly to the chest of a Cyberman.
Yep.
They didn't have a problem back then. So
not like they do today. I mean, the Doctor still didn't prefer weapons, but he didn't hypocritically condemn them so much before using them.
Right. So Davros reveals that his life force, his lifespan is connected to all the Daleks, so that he's being sustained by their life. As they live, so does he, is what he says. And he says he can't die because they're infected with the defect of respect for him and mercy for him. He calls it a design flaw he's unable to eliminate. And this goes back to where the Doctor went and saved Boy Davros on the battlefield and showed him mercy.
Yep.
Is mercy a genetic trait? How does it get passed on?
Actually, yes, it is.
Okay.
It has an evolutionary benefit in that if you show mercy, it builds better communities that promote survival value. And so, the evolution of altruism is actually a big point of discussion in evolutionary anthropology and psychology. So by the Doctor showing mercy to the boy Davros, now, it wouldn't have been just genetic, but Davros designed the Dalek's DNA. So if you make Davros more merciful, then he may incorporate that element into the Dalek DNA. And we have a kind of interesting play going on here between this pair of episodes and Genesis of the Daleks, because in Genesis of the Daleks, Tom Baker is sent back to either kill them or modify them so that their future history plays out differently. And he ends up doing the latter, hoping that they'll become more merciful than they otherwise would have been. Here we have a setup where the 12th Doctor is responsible for Davros. So this is the genesis of Davros' story. He says, at one point, the 12th Doctor says, Davros made the Daleks, but who made Davros? And the answer is, it's him. It's the 12th Doctor. Mm-hmm. He, as the 12th Doctor, met the boy Davros and initially appeared to abandon, and even based on camera trickery, appeared to exterminate him. Right. But we're going to find out he was actually saving him and modifying Davros's nature to include more mercy.
Right. But yet not enough to make him not a homicidal genius.
Yeah.
And so the Davros presents the Doctor with this choice. He can murder every Dalek in order to kill Davros. Let him commit a genocidal murder. He says not as an act of war, but a choice, which I'm not sure that there's a difference.
Well, he means as a conscious, deliberate choice. This goes back again to Genesis of the Daleks. Yep. There's a famous conversation between the 4th Doctor and Davros where the Doctor is trying to stimulate Davros's conscience. And he says, suppose that you had a capsule containing a virus that would kill all life. Would you release it? And Davros starts thinking about it, and he finds the idea fascinating, and he starts using his hand to mimic having a little capsule of a virus. And at one point he crushes his fingers together and says, Yes, I would do that. Such power would set me up above the gods. And that's what is being played on here, where the Davros is now putting the Doctor in that situation. You can kill all life on Skaro in order to get me. Would you do that?
Right. And even says, you'll be a god. This is your opportunity to be a god to the Doctor.
Well, and then, of course, then they show some of that famous conversation between the Doctor and Sarah Jane of, have I the right, where he's holding the two wires that have the explosives in the to kill off all the Daleks.
Right. And that's when he makes that choice not to kill them off. Yep. And at this point, the Doctor still thinks that Clara is dead, and he's kind of operating on that level. And then, because if Clara is dead, Davros tells him, then the Doctor doesn't have to hesitate, right? Because Clara is the Doctor's compassion. Mm-hmm. And so maybe do Missy and Clara represent the two poles of the Doctor's conscience? Sort of like the little devil, the little angel on his shoulder.
Maybe,
it kind of interesting because Missy is, kill them all and, just be done with it.
Well, ish. I think Missy's inconsistent too.
Right.
One thing that I like about the timey-wiminess of this is the fact that it's the 12th Doctor. I don't know why I always want to call Peter Capaldi the 11th Doctor, because that's Matt Smith. But one of the reasons that this works as a plot with all the prior history of the Doctor and Davros is that it was specifically the 12th Doctor who he encountered as a little boy. So he doesn't know that that's the Doctor until he gets the 12th Doctor's face.
Right.
And all of a sudden, those childhood memories take on new meaning for Davros. So he could otherwise interact with all of the other Doctors from the 4th to the 11th as if he had not met the Doctor before the 4th. And then all of a sudden, the Doctor becomes Peter Capaldi, and it's like, this is the man I met as a child. And that's what triggers the occurrence of these events now. Right.
And he accuses the Doctor of coming out of shame for what he did to the boy. Seemingly abandon him.
Yeah, this is also, and presumably in some original timeline, the Doctor did abandon him. And then, based on these events, he goes back and saves him.
Although, the mercy thing has been there. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Also, this is playing with a theme that they had last season in Doctor Who, which was the "Am I a good man?" kind of moral conscience crisis for the Doctor, which always came out of nowhere and was ridiculous.
Well, even
yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying. They're playing on it now because Davros, it talks about having fought for his own and a man should belong, and I'm glad that Gallifrey exists, and I'm glad that you were able to save it because you should have a home, and I've tried to fight for my people. And he even asks the Doctor, am I a good man? Paralleling what the Doctor asked Clara a season ago. And it's like, okay, this is a little over the top. I mean, it's already obvious that just on the writing level, that because of the language that Davros keeps using of, oh, Doctor, why don't you stroke those snake-like tentacles in my life force device, you know, and
right.
Step closer to it. And it's like, it's so obvious he's trying to trap him.
Right. Yep. At one point, he's even, says he accuses the Doctor of coming out of shame, and the Doctor says, I came out of compassion, and Davros says, compassion will kill you in the end. And the Doctor says, I wouldn't die of anything else. The idea of the good man. I mean, I suppose everyone, from their own point of view, thinks of themselves as a good person. Well, most people, unless you're, some
psychopaths don't care.
Yeah. But people who actually have some kind of conscience probably still think of themselves as right and good. Mm-hmm. I suppose that raises the question whether Davros is a psychopath. Probably is.
Oh yeah, I think that's
very much
clear.
so.
Yeah. So you mentioned how Clara gets locked inside the Dalek shell by Missy, which is a callback to Oswald.
Mm-hmm.
The
Souffle girl.
First appearance of Clara in Asylum of the Daleks. Right. And we have a direct dialogue level callback to that because at the end in the crisis in that, when Matt Smith's Doctor was helping Clara realize who she was, she ended up saying, I'm a Dalek.
Right.
And she said it in this kind of mechanical, I am a Dalek way as she was realizing her identity because she had visualized herself as being trapped in a spaceship when really she was a spaceship passenger that had been modified and put in a Dalek shell and turned into a Dalek. So here, Missy gets Clara into the Dalek shell, and the shell is translating what Clara says into Dalek-modified English. Mm-hmm. So it says exterminate a lot. It interprets a lot of things Clara says as exterminate. But also, when she says, I am Clara Oswald, it says, I am a Dalek, and we have that callback to Asylum of the Daleks.
Mm-hmm. And Missy tells us that Daleks fire their gun through emotion. So when Clara gets emotional, her gun starts firing, and they reload the gun by yelling, exterminate, which is why they say it so often.
Yeah.
So, again, this isn't necessarily a flaw of the writing. It's Missy. Who knows? Everything Missy says is suspect.
I did like Missy dancing around as Clara's firing the blaster. I was so upset and firing the blaster around, and she's dancing around the beams just gleefully.
Yeah. There's also a moving moment in the Dalek Doctor confrontation scene, or not confrontation, but conversation scene, where all these years that ever since Davros was first introduced in Genesis of the Daleks, he's had this electronic eye on his forehead, and his own eyes are sealed shut. So it's like he's got eye sockets and he's got eyelids, but they're always closed, and he's always observing his environment through an electronic eye on his forehead. And in this, he says he wants to see, he's about to die, he hopes he lives long enough to see the sunrise with his own eyes. And he turns off the electronic eye in his forehead and opens his human eyes for the first time in the series. And that's a very moving moment. It really does effectively communicate, that this is a serious situation. At least it it helps alongside all of the obvious entrapment language. He also is able to finally convince the doctor that he is dying. And the doctor says, "You're really dying." And he says, "Did you doubt it?" And the doctor says, "I did." And Davros says, "Then we have established one thing only. You are not a good doctor." Meaning he couldn't diagnose a dying man.
Right.
And they both laugh.
Davros and the doctor laughing together was weird. I have to say that was a very strange, surreal moment. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the typical maniacal laugh that Davros has.
Right.
He's always got the type laugh.
Yeah. This was more of a genuine, heartfelt laugh. And the doctor tells him, "I'm not helping Davros. I'm helping a little boy in a battlefield to see another sunrise." He's remembering back to that child and saying, that's what I'm helping. And this is when we get the reveal that the Davros was manipulating the doctor all along to get his regeneration energy. He gets the what is it called? The snake guy.
Colony Sarf.
Colony Sarf. Yeah. Wraps him up and they start sucking the regeneration energy from him. And not only Davros will be regenerated, but all Daleks. Wahahaha. My evil plan is revealed.
Because they're all connected through that machine.
Mm-hmm.
And Davros then voices the prophecy of the hybrid creature and thinks it is going to be a half Dalek, half Time Lord. And that's that prophecy that runs through this season, right?
This is our first introduction of the series arc involving the hybrid.
Right. And then the doctor starts counting down, and it turns out that we talked about the Daleks in the sewers, which is also the same. The Dalek word for sewer is the same word for cemetery. And they're regenerated and they're angry.
Yeah,
and they want to kill all the others.
You've got to mention Missy coming in and blasting the thing that the doctor was hooked up to.
Yeah,
right.
So Missy saves the doctor from the machine, and she also kills Colony Sarf. Apparently,
Yep.
And they have a moment where we see a little snakehead kind of falling over, suggesting that Colony Sarf has just died.
So if the doctor knew Davros' plan all along and was just going along with it, I wonder how he planned to get out of that machine if Missy hadn't come along to blast it.
You're not supposed to think about art. Right. You're just to let it wash over you.
Well, he knew he would figure something out because he knew he was going to survive.
That's right.
And Missy just happened to be the resolution of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think about that somewhat frequently, about the doctor. I don't think he plans that far in advance. He just assumes that it's going to work out based on prior experience because it's worked out for him for 2,000 years. So, of course, it's going to work out this time.
That's true. Yep.
I kind of, and this is only just occurring to me now, but I have an element of that kind of reasoning in my own experience because, like, when I go call a square dance, the choreography is extemporaneous. I'm making it up as I go. As it's coming out of my mouth, I'm making up what I'm going to do next, and it has to all fit together so that the dancers get resolved properly. But I've been doing it for 15 years, and I don't really have to plan in advance what I'm going to do. I just assume it's going to work out, and I don't know what I'm going to do now, but I'll figure it out as I'm doing it, and it'll work, and it does. And so I guess even ordinary, folks like us can have a little bit of an insight of, I don't really have to plan that far. It'll work out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, you get to a point where you're an expert at a thing, and 2,000 years doing it, I suppose, would be enough.
Well, and let's be honest, it seems like this is kind of one of Stephen Moffat's writing tricks of, I don't know how I'm going to end this, but I'm going to put it down on paper and see where it goes. Because as has been pointed out on this podcast many times, he likes these grand shows that it just kind of ends right, but how they got there, don't think about it too deeply, as Jimmy keeps saying on this one.
Just skip ahead to the end. So Missy,
and enjoy the little things they do along the way, like Missy pokes Davros in the eye.
Right. Yes. Well, and that's, I mean, again, we've talked a lot about Moffat. The enjoyment of Moffat is the moments, the dialogue, the fun stuff. If you're there for the plot and to make consistent sense throughout, you're going to be disappointed. So, that's just the way it is.
Although Stephen Moffat does do fairly regularly pretty good timey-wimey plots.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning he exploits the potential of time travel and storytelling to a degree that other Doctor Who writers typically do not.
Mhm.
Right. That's true. That is true. So Missy, as you mentioned, tries to trick the Doctor into killing Clara because Clara is stuck inside the Dalek and can't tell. Every time she says, "Doctor, it's me, Clara," it says, "It's me. I'm a Dalek. I am a Dalek," over and over again. And he's about to blast it when she's not saying mercy. She's saying, help me. And the Dalek translates that as mercy. And that's where the Doctor kind of steps back and goes, wait a minute, a Dalek's asking for mercy? And gets the clue that something is not as it should be. And that's when we realize that all Clara had to do was think the word open, like just open the shell, and lets her out. And then he asks himself, how does a tiny bit of mercy get in the Dalek DNA, and runs off to rescue Davros in the minefield.
And after realizing Missy tried to trick him into killing Clara, he tells Missy to hit the road.
Yes. And when he goes back to the battlefield, we go back to that scene from the end of the first part, the
Magician's Apprentice.
Thank you, Magician's Apprentice. And we go back to that scene where he's pointing the Dalek gun, we think at Davros, and says, I'm going to save my friend the only way I can, which is, now that we've got the whole context, flips it all over. Instead of, I'm going to save her by killing Davros before he can create the Daleks, now it's, I'm going to save Davros and teach him about mercy, which is an interesting idea. And that takes us to the end. Any final thoughts on this one, Father Cory?
Nothing here.
Jimmy, any last thoughts?
I'm not a fan of the sonic sunglasses at all.
Oh, yeah.
Which get introduced in this. I also do, I think I wasn't here last week, but I really love the hand mines just as a concept. I mean, they don't make a lot of sense, but they're creepy. And they're also a nice play on the word landmine.
Yeah.
We also get a little something we often don't get with the Master, which is a little bit of what happens after the defeat. Because normally the Master gets defeated and either taken into custody or often apparently killed. And we don't get much of a sense of what happens next. But here we do, because as the Dalek city is collapsing, we see Missy running alone after the doctors told her to leave. She is running through the Dalek city and she gets surrounded by Daleks, and she pauses and says, I've just had a very clever idea. And so apparently she's going to try to make some kind of deal with the Daleks.
Right. Or use the wrist, the vortex manipulator trick again? Maybe not.
Those she indicated were burned out.
Because, right.
Yeah.
One of the last bits, in fact, the very last line of the episode is the Doctor with young Davros, who says, who asks the Doctor, which side are you on? Are you the enemy? And the Doctor says, I'm not sure any of that matters. Friends, enemies, so long as there's mercy, always mercy. And frankly, I think that's a really good, in the end, that's a really good message, right? Friends or enemies, what really matters is mercy.
It also plays on themes that had been introduced earlier in the episode about who's a friend and who's an enemy. I mean, we've had that with Missy. Yeah. She's both. And she claims, and this is originally presented as if it's, just a non-credible dodge, but she says that by having Clara in the Dalek shell, she was trying to communicate a message to the Doctor about the friend inside the enemy inside the friend, and so forth. And that's then the setup for the final line with Davros about friends and enemies not really mattering, but mercy counting.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice little twist there. Good. All right. So that should do it this time. I think we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Patrick R., Peter V., Ambrose B., Levi P., and Jonathan H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edited this episode for us. So we'd love to hear what you think of Which is Familiar, this 12th Doctor story, and actually both parts, including the Magician's Apprentice. You can let us.
But did we? I don't think we've talked about the significance of those titles.
Oh.
But the Doctor is the magician. In fact, the 12th Doctor specifically, it's commented he dresses like a magician.
Sure.
And the witch is Missy. And the magician's apprentice and the witch's familiar are both Clara.
Right. And a familiar is usually like a
companion animal that is
servant.
Involved in the magic. Yeah.
The stereotypical black cat.
Right. Exactly. Very good. I'm glad you brought that up. We didn't miss that. So if you've got any further comments or questions or discussion, you can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch the Secrets of Doctor Who video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you can leave comments, you can like and subscribe. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Big Finish story, The End of the Line. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, Dalek Supreme, your sewers are revolting.